And here we sit in 2012 with the world still burning oil and gas and coal, when we have had all the information we need to have had a completely new civilization.
Dr. Stephen Greer is absolutely a hero.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
You know, hundreds of billions of dollars. I think the public would be a little annoyed.
All right, sit down and shut up.
More criminals! Look at the hole!
We're citizens just like you! I was told to pray, not to meditate. I was told to talk, not to listen. I'm learning to listen.
The primary purpose is to train people to understand these other civilizations and their cultures.
I don't give a goddamn what anybody else says about it. I saw that.
But who do you tell without them looking at you like you ain't wrapped too tight?
And I was a part of a United States Air Force cover-up for 18 years.
What we are attempting to achieve is a device which defeats the perpendicular force of gravity.
When we look at our data, we lost 7% of weight.
We now have the technology to take ET home.
Consciousness is at once the most familiar thing to us and the most mysterious.
It doesn't take much effort if you just clear your mind.
People are afraid of looking at technology.
Paul Brown stuff got basically suppressed for many years.
He got murdered.
The problem is not proving that UFOs exist. It's when you begin to expose the energy and propulsion systems behind how they're getting here.
Puede saber los años y todo. Bueno,
Live, this is One for the Record. I'm Diana, and today is April 24th, 2013, and here's your news updates for today. Hey, Jimmy Richardson, heads up. You wanted to know who was that? She's also from Flint, Michigan. Her name's Karen. See, this is her computer I'm using right now. I'm not home. Alrighty then. So let's move on with that one. Let's see here. Uh-oh. Alright. This is the Extinction Protocol 2012 and beyond. H7N9 declared one of the most lethal flu viruses ever spreads beyond China mainland. First case reported in Taiwan. Moderate 5.6 earthquake strikes region of Afghanistan. Alrighty then. That's all that's new on here. Moving on. The Watchers watching the world. Deadly earthquake flash floods hit northern Afghanistan. Strong earthquake magnitude 6.5 struck New Ireland region, Papua New Guinea. That was yesterday. Alrighty then. Usually that means there's going to be a lot on E&E News. Let's see. Okay, E&E News, the energy news. Today, TV shock as expert says tar sands oil is flowing into Arkansas River, Lake Conway. Heads up, more animals found soaked in crude. Also today, Newsweek. Excruciating, bizarre, grotesque ailments after working BP oil spill in Gulf. Heads up. Yesterday, new flyover, giant sinkhole, oil sheen covering surface, section of trees not turning green. All right, so that was U.S. Canada. Let's go to Fukushima, Japan. Government. Vegetables from inside Fukushima no-go zone. Now okay to ship to stores. Farms preparing crops. Heads up on that. Hopefully they won't ship them over here. Heads up, make sure you know where your food comes from. Also today, xenon detected in Japan, consistent with nuclear fission event. Could be from reactor or other atomic activity. North Korea bomb test. Baloney. It's never stopped over there. Study. Fukushima fallout spiked year after 3/11. Alrighty then. I'm going to go to the breaking news. Let's see what we got there. Okay, the breaking news. Federal lawmaker confirmed device used to end remote-controlled toys triggered Boston bombs. Oh, remote-controlled toys. That sounds like a drone, doesn't it? Video. Damage in Jefferson Parish, Louisiana from storm. That's 36 minutes ago. Heads up, Louisiana. If you know someone there, better check on them. Seven people charged with smuggling illegal fish bladders to China. That was an hour ago. That's from AP. Wow. Alrighty then. Please stay tuned. I am attaching Dr. DEAGLE's NUTRIMEDICAL report from, I believe it was from the 22nd. So, there you go. And he had Dr. McKinney on. And they're talking about Ison. There's also, he says some political things, but since it's so slow to use the editor, I'm not going to edit it out. Just bear with it if he says something you don't agree with politics. That's all. What's more important is to hear what's going on with our climate change in this Comet Ison. So I'm just giving you a heads up. Sometimes Dr. DEAGLE will say something politically mixed in with all his great, scientific theories and explanations. So this time I'm not going to edit it out. That doesn't mean my channel agrees nor disagrees. That is the question. I'm just going to show you what's out there without censoring it at all, since the editor takes too long to edit things out. Alrighty then. So, we're at Wednesday hump day. 3 days down. 2 to go before the weekend. Hopefully it won't take 2 hours to splice all this together and you'll get it. Alrighty then. Take care. I got your backs. Please be prepared for anything. And I'll say it again. It might be is getting closer and closer to where we all need to move to high ground. Just in case. If you're along the shorelines, the coastlines, you might want to start considering, heading towards the mountains, the hills. Alrighty then. Take care, and I'll catch you on the flip side tomorrow.
Welcome back to the NUTRIMEDICAL Report. We are now joined with Professor James McKinney. Professor McKinney, you have a lot of important things to mention today. reports that are going to go back over a period of time. Give us the top bill of what you want to talk about today.
Well, here's the situation. For a long time now, since really last September, I've been taking the news regarding Comet Ison. It's the C2012S1. Ison is the name of the comet. And the stories, as the story broke the 21st of September 2012, that there was a new comet, of course I was interested and started looking into it, see what was going on. But right out of the chute, everything started looking weird. A lot of strange things. So naturally, I just kind of kept my ear to the rail, and the level of strangeness has just grown beyond proportion. NASA began very early on saying this would be the comet of the century, possibly the millennium. And that's saying quite a bit, because we've seen some big comets over the last 1,000 years. The great comets, there's one probably every 50 years, a really, really big comet. There are some major comets, like the Great Comet of 1680, but they're claiming that this could rival any and all of those. So it's like, well, where are they getting this information from? And so every time they come out and say something or present new information, it just turns out to be more bizarre than the first statement. But let me just kind of start out with some of the early things. It was announced on September 21st, 2012, which is the fall solstice, which is kind of a strange day to announce a comet that had been discovered actually a number of days earlier. So the question is, with a comet that's clearly out a little bit beyond the orbit of Jupiter, something that any amateur could discover, why did they wait? And then the question is, how long did they really wait before announcing this? And then the other very strange thing, which was pointed out by a listener, was that they didn't name the comet after the so-called discoverers. The Ison Institute is a observatory in Russia. It houses an automated telescope system that looks for near-Earth objects and comets and objects like that in the solar system. So throughout all of their history for asteroids or other discoveries, they've always named the objects after their discoverers. In the case of Comet Ison, they did not, which seems very strange. They noted in the initial announcement who had discovered it, but then you look back at the history of those people in that observatory in Russia who had made discoveries. For example, Comet Elenin was named after a guy named Elenin who works at the observatory. So this was the first time for these discoverers and the first time for the observatory to name it after the institute instead of the discoverer who works at the institute. So that's pretty strange. So, like I say, the laundry list of strange occurrences has just multiplied. So that's what I want to talk about today, and we'll go into all these various strange...
One thing you mentioned, Professor McKinney, is the size of the kernel, the central portion of the comet. The sizes don't make sense. You mentioned you think it's around 2,600 kilometers. That's considerably bigger than any of the other comets that have passed over the last number of centuries.
Well, yeah, and this is one of the big NASA lies. Is one of the huge lies from NASA is the size of comets. Nucleus. You've seen a big cloud around a comet, so you can't really see the nucleus from Earth. You can see them with radio telescopes, and so that's one of the bizarre things about comet research is why they are not using radio telescope measurements to accurately measure. They can get the tumble rate, the rotation, all kinds of properties about these comet nuclei with radio measurements, down to 1/10 of a kilometer easily. So why are they, well, of course, taking the data, but why aren't they releasing the data? They have this second-order expert gives an interpretation, and as in the case of Comet Ison, what they're saying is that, well, due to the dust production rate early in its discovery, it must have a nucleus of 5 kilometers across. And I'm going, well, wait a minute. 5 kilometers across, Halley's Comet, which was a little teeny comet, had a nucleus of 7 kilometers across, 2 kilometers bigger. And it was a teeny comet. So where is this 5 kilometers across coming from? See, they got to keep these small, but in their rush to lie and cover up, their left hand doesn't know what their right hand is doing. So there's another very strange thing. The nucleus of Hale-Bopp, NASA says, was 42 kilometers across. I saw a picture of it when it was leaving the solar system, the nucleus of Hale-Bopp. It was about the size of a moon, and it had volcanic plumes coming off of it. So you can see that they're lying about the size of comet nuclei, and especially this one. The official size of Comet Hale-Bopp, which was kind of a medium-sized comet, bigger than most, but very medium-sized, the official size was 42 kilometers. So the Comet Ison with a 5-kilometer nucleus should be, an eighth of the size or eighth of the production size in terms of tail material, an eighth of the size of Hale-Bopp. So why are they boasting this as being comet of the millennium? You see what I'm saying? Nothing makes sense.
Now, are they doing that because they want to play it down? Because if this does cause, as it's going to pass very near the sun, 700,000 kilometers from the sun's surface in the inner heliosphere, the superstorm that's going to be created, if it's Earth-centric, it could be very damaging to the solar array of telescopes around the Earth and satellites, ground-based communications, and power grid. And it could crash civilization. It could be literally the kill shot. And that's why I'm very worried that a comet passing near the sun is the most likely triggering factor for a kill shot event.
Well, now that's a great observation. It leads us up to another one of these cover-up NASA stories. And, of course, you talked about that. I've talked about that in my early predictions. And, of course, throughout my whole history, one of the main things I do is observe comets near the sun, where they will send a spark-like exchange with the sun, and boom, out comes this massive flare. So NASA all along has been denying this. They say, oh, that's coincidence. And hundreds of times we've seen this, where a comet will come near the sun, and boom, out comes these major CMEs and explosive events off the sun. But how can that happen from a little ice ball passing near the sun when supposedly the nuclear fusion of the sun is down in the core? I mean, how does a little passing ice ball do this? Well, they had to deny it. So this passed about a month and a half ago, this guy from Israel, and mind you, when these cover stories come out, they always find some name guy to be the kind of the leader. You don't find Don Yeomans of NASA JPL, who's a supposedly comet expert. You don't see the Goddard big-name comet guys. You see some no-name guy come out with this stuff, and it gets published. But this guy from Israel, a no-name guy, comes out and he says his calculations show that an ice ball hitting the sun could cause a massive CME flare that could destroy our grid system. Well, of course, this is something I've been saying all along, but it's action at a distance. The comet doesn't have to hit the sun. But do you see how they've created a cover story that would match with standard Tier 2 fairy tale science, so that now an ice ball can come and hit the sun and cause a massive CME that would devastate our power grid?
Yeah, I'm going to make a few connections between that and some of the effects like this Boston massacre, because I think the government is scrambling with the financial system, with the control of the public, because they know that there are some serious events that may happen in the next few years, and they want to use it or lose its control beforehand. Back to the NUTRIMEDICAL report, and we mentioned just before the break that the use it or lose it philosophy is one that we have to kind of put together a comprehensive plan. I tie this to the Boston massacre. The the shot heard around the world was now the bomb, the pressure cooker bomb. You can be certain, like the comments by their uncle, that they were set up. These were double agents. There were CIA or FBI operatives that were working overseas, CIA. They literally turned, started to decide to turn. They were monitoring them while they were turning. I'm sure that they helped them obtain the materials. These are military-grade materials to use these. There appeared to be a shaped charge inside the pressure cooker, not just, quote, homemade material for the bomb. What we're having is a scramble by the federal government and by rogue elements to create a police state in America to literally turn every shopping center, every rail station into literally a TSA screening zone. And the government's in a panic because they want to literally grab our guns. If they do, they can grab the front end of the gun, but the bullet will be coming out as the first part we're going to give back to them. And they need to know where this is not a threat, this is a promise. You start grabbing our guns, we're in a full hot civil war. And if you think you can take us on, you're crazy. You might even start an airborne plague, because I see H7N9, according to Chinese and other scientists, is definitely a bioweapon, 8 times faster mutating, 20% case fatality rate so far. We have other emerging viruses that we know are tweaked, including the novel coronavirus that emerged from the Hajj. I guarantee you that the global elite, who are running out of options in their banking system, that are worried about major events like a coronal mass ejection caused by a comet, they're in a panic to maintain control when the power grid and the satellites go down. And they know that if they don't get control and don't get their new world order before that hard date, they're done. And that's why I believe this is why this event happened. This is another false flag. We always see a Saudi involved and some other person that's been half-baked, like CNBC wanted to bring out an individual who they said was a right-wing terrorist, domestic, because they want to make sure that they demonize, just like they did at Oklahoma City after Roby Ridge, demonize homegrown, quote, patriots that are gun-toting as if we're some kind of terrorists when we're actually citizens that want to maintain the rule of law. Not use our guns, but use our strengths to say, you're not going to take our rights. You're not going to do obscene things. You're not going to steal our property and our banks. You're not going to do things that are wrong. You're not. And if we have a disarmed public, they can get away with pretty well anything. And if they can't disarm us, then, push comes to shove, they're going to find out the shove back is a lot harder than they can imagine. These politicians that tried to do the gun grab and these bills, the Democrats and a few Republicans, their political life is over. 2014, any of these senators that actually were pushing for these things, the people will remember, and they'll be removed from office like a tumor. Obama needs to be politically castrated by next year. We need to make certain that nothing else that he can meddle with will happen. He needs to be impeached. He needs to be imprisoned. He needs to be removed from office in a very ugly way fairly quickly if possible. But if we don't do that, things like this Boston bombing and other false flag events will continue, including the next thing I expect is a step up to a nuclear device going off at a major sporting event like Super Bowl Steve talked about 4 years ago. He might be late, but he may still be right. And I think that it's tied to things like these solar events where we know comets are probably the most dangerous thing to pass in our near space, not because they hit the planet, because it could be 55 million miles away, but the action at a distance that you've researched is the most dangerous thing in terms of solar activity causing extinction level events and sub-extinction level events on Earth. These can cause some major problems to people. If we have a Carrington-style event, it could be the end of our civilization. And that could be a very ugly end. It could be an end that actually makes the Dark Ages and the Stone Age look like going to the Sandals Resort compared to what it'll be like here in America and any Western nation if your power grid goes out and your satellite communications are gone. We're talking about a road warrior on steroids. I mean, road warrior would actually look like a resort party compared to what will happen in actual fact.
Yeah. Dr. Bill, I wanted to mention another topic, and these are, like I was saying at the beginning, there's a whole laundry list of these stories that the JPL and the cover stories have come out with. But I mentioned the one about the ice ball hitting the sun and so-called somehow magically creates nuclear fusion in the core and causes this big flare to come out. Nobody explains how this happens.
Would you explain doesn't work either? I mean, first, if you have a nuclear reaction in the core, if you actually work out the nuclear physics, the time it takes for a photon of energy to emerge from the core, if that was the true theory, would be somewhere between 22 and 100,000 years. Those photons in the center of the sun do not emerge to the surface of the sun for 100,000 years. You have to have nuclear reactions occurring on the sun's surface like you've done, and no one else has countered your research. The problem is the tier 1 scientists who know the truth always want to undermine you by putting out reports to these agencies because they don't want the public to know what's really happening and what real dangers are present, and how with our current satellites like IRAS and the stereo telescopes and our Chandra X-ray telescopes, how we could know all of these factors. If it became in the public domain, people could probably prepare properly, and politicians would make decisions to actually harden the grid against a CME knocking out the power grid. But instead of breaking it up or having proper preparation for the public, they're doing nothing. In fact, what they're doing is they're setting up for mass death, mass genocide, mass chaos is what they're doing.
Exactly. I wanted to recount another story here that just came out. Now, early in the Comet Ison history, I started analyzing the orbit, and I made a whole laundry list of dates and predictions, and the last one, or one of the last ones, was January 12th of 2014. And I said, here's the situation. We're going to have Jupiter. We're going to have the comet up and behind us, just a little bit up and behind us, actually moving out away from the sun at that point. We're going to have Earth. We're going to have a new moon, and then we're going to have Venus, all electrically aligned. So basically, we have a cross-solar system electrical alignment, which is extremely significant. And I said, okay, now the comet is moving out towards Jupiter, and between us and Jupiter, and if it connects to Jupiter, then the sulfur dioxide from the Jupiter region of the solar system could come in. That's why Jupiter looks orange. It could come into the comet, and if we're electrically, it would go all the way into Earth, and we would see what the ancients talked about it. I called it the red hand of death, where the sulfur dioxide comes into the upper atmosphere and filters down. Okay, so I made this prediction. I said also we could very likely see upper level aurora activity. 2 days ago, NASA comes out with once again, a no-name guy comes out of the middle of nowhere and makes a prediction. He says, due to his computer modeling, special streams of dust-sized micrometeorites are going to leave Comet Ison exactly on January 12, 2014, 2 of these beams, these magical dust-sized particles from Comet Ison will cross and come to Earth, and guess what they're going to cause? They could be visible from Earth as small dust-sized particles, and there could be some upper-level noctoluminescent cloud activity. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, they're always trying to steal your ideas and twist it, aren't they?
Yeah, it's that Tier 2 twist.
But they're not wanting to tell people the truth about the danger of space weather without properly preparing. Welcome back, and please continue, Professor McCanney. Setting the record straight here, I believe that the research done by Alex Jones and Dan Badandi, I couldn't believe when I saw the Fox News report by O'Reilly and his idiot person. He was making negative comments about people that are, quote, conspiracy theorists. No, we're conspiracy scientists. If somebody doesn't believe that when rich people get together, or elite groups like United Nations get together, or elite scientists like JPL and NASA get together and try to hide things from other scientific groups or the public, that's what's the reality. In fact, even a lot of presidents have to be informed about what's going on. There's a show on television called The American Book of Secrets. Well, in a sense, that's what happens. When a new president gets in, they have to brief him for months to bring him up to speed as to what's really going on, not what is given out for public consumption. And they'll call it national security. That's a pile of crap, because what's really going on, a lot of these things are important for the public to survive what's coming on, because the public needs to prepare for these things, whether it's financial, space weather, or any other disaster. And if they don't prepare, there's no preparation there for FEMA, which just totally takes over and tries to, I call it the Federal Emergency Magnification Agency. They just magnify the emergency. Professor McCanney, let's continue. You've got more issues to talk about today.
Yeah, by the way, I was going to mention, you were talking about informing presidents. I'd say the exception was George Bush, When he took office, Condoleezza Rice took him into the basement and had a map and taught him the countries of the world and the leaders' names of the world.
Yeah, he had a private tutor actually. Yeah, he was quite a I guess I call him the sock puppet president.
Oh yeah, that's just absurd. But okay, on to the on the break we're talking now. There are information or disinformation specialists that work at NASA, and one of the top guys there, his name is Tony Phillips, Dr. Tony Phillips, and I'm not sure what he's a doctor of, but he is their news media outlet specialist. And anything that comes out of NASA filters through this guy. And so basically it's molded, it's homogenized, it's blended with the Tier 2 NASA twist. And as I said, we need Chubby Checkers back to do the Tier 2 twist with me, with Tony Phillips, because that's exactly what's happening here. They are twisting and turning. And so this latest... came out April 19th, this latest article I was talking about, where the magical 2 streams of fine dust particles. Now, just listen to all the magical things that have to happen here. A meteor stream from a comet is typically very tightly associated with the orbit of this comet, but this meteor stream is not. We're nowhere anywhere near the orbit of this comet. But these are going to shoot out the front of the comet and come magically directly at Earth. And guess what? They're going to hit here January 12th, 2014. Exactly the date that I picked to when I said that's when the red hand of death could begin. And that would be fine dust particles coming in from Jupiter. The article put out and screened by Tony Phillips of NASA says that also because of this, there could be noctiluminescent clouds up in the upper atmosphere. And what I said is there would be upper atmospheric auroras because we're attaching electrically to the comet, which is at that point getting behind us and going towards Jupiter. I said we could have weather situations, and so the way they end the article that NASA just put out is there could be all kinds of surprises. Now, what kind of prediction is that? All kinds of surprises. That
sounds like Chuck E. Cheese's. Sounds like anything happens, we knew about it, we take credit for it, but we can't tell you.
Right, and they. But mind you, there's no method on the planet. How come other comets don't have this magical ability to shoot these fine dust particles out and hit Earth? No other comet has ever been able to do that. Why this comet? Now, get this. This is even more amazing. Now, this comet is going to swing around the sun and then come back. So the magical stream of particles coming from one side, they say that there's another stream of particles that's going to follow this comet around the sun, and those are going to come out and hit us on the very same day. So we're going to be hit from 2 directions. We're going to be in a crossfire of this fine dust. Now, what's the possibility that 2 streams of dust coming from totally different directions, coming from totally different paths, are going to hit us on exactly the same day, January 12th, 2014?
Exactly, yeah.
Absurd.
It's absurd. Now, that ties in with another question I have, Professor McCanney. I get a lot of emails from people that are really hot on this issue of Planet X. And I know you've talked about it in the past. Some are even saying that all the information is being suppressed about Planet X. It's actually swung in past the sun and coming back out again. It's passed through the ecliptic. What's your take on that? Do you think that there really is a Planet X-like object, a dwarf star, with orbital materials that, because it's so cold relative to deep space, that they can't see it except with IRAS and these other telescopes? Is there something like that out there, or is it just that we're dealing with the dangers of cometary issues that might be pushed in from an object out in the Oort cloud that may have started coming in a long time ago?
Well, here's the situation. Now, I get this barrage of craziness, and there are people making these wild claims that have no ability, first of all, to even get data, let alone present real data. They don't know the format.
Exactly. I researched into it, too, and I could find no data to indicate that there's a planet X currently in the inner solar system. There might be in the Oort cloud, but nothing that indicates it's in the inner solar system. None.
No.
I know that people
and
trying to say that. These things can sneak in and sneak up on us, but the reality is the sources where these people are coming from. First of all, if you have data about something that's like this, that's big, it's like it. First of all, it would be from a comet, but no matter what your belief system, you would have to present it with an ephemeris, an orbit. You'd have to say, okay, that would tell you where to find the particular object at a given time and date, with an observatory or amateur equipment. None of this is being given. Just wild claims like Saturn is having storms or... I heard that. The Saturn storm theory. Yeah. In other words, wild statements not based on... Would you think that might be a disinformation op to dissuade people from seeing the real issues? Because I see this as, and I see a lot of very strident people who have been pretty ignorant, in some of their emails to me and thinking they know more than I do. Well, guess what? I started studying astronomy as a kind of a kid in my teens, and I've always been really interested. And I started studying these things many, many years ago, and I've followed experts like yourself who really do know what they're talking about. If there's a Planet X type object, there's no evidence it's in the inner solar system. What is coming in are these big damn comets, and they really are a danger. It's almost like you're in a fight with somebody, and you're worried about a fist that is going to miss you by a foot, but the one that's heading right for your nose you ignore. It's kind of silly, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the statements that come out, or I've seen things where people say, I saw something on YouTube video, and it seemed like, and it's just like, no, you don't understand. That's not the way you present scientific data.
I see this as hysteria to cover up real data. For example, I call the internet the sewer net. You can get excellent information like yours on your website, jmccsci.com. Listen to your program, listen to this program. If you listen to this show, you're going to get less and less confused. You're going to understand end-time issues. You're going to understand space weather, how your body works. You're going to understand financial issues. You're going to get less confused. The problem is that with many other programs, with many other university, public media, etc., you're going to find you're more confused. You're constantly being manipulated and lied to. And then with the sewer net, you get people that are not experts. They'll say they saw a YouTube clip for 8 minutes, and now all of a sudden they're on I would call it an information jihad.
Yeah.
And they don't know what they're talking about. It's irritating.
Yeah. Yeah.
In other words, I want them to understand, listen to the program, check out the facts. You're not a Google genius. You're just delusional. You need to listen up and check out the facts yourself. There are real dangers, but it's not like you think it is. So I'm going to mention a couple of names here, and I want people, if they're getting emails from these characters, they need to ignore. One is Sheldon Day, the other is John DiNardo. They need to stop listening to these voices, or anybody similar who thinks they know what's really going on. The problem is there's some hard dates. This Ison is going to pass in early November. We also have a danger window, October of 2014. These things, if they do, could pass near the sun and the action at a distance, could cause a CME that could knock out our power grid, our satellite communications, and crash our civilization. I think also some of the behavior of the globalists, because if they don't bring down America, it would be very easy to solve the problem of terrorism. Terrorism is, quote, Islam. My solution would be start deporting all Muslims from the country. Number two, anybody Muslim traveling here has to go through a separate security line. Total body ultrasound scan, not a terahertz scan, which can cause cancer, and we don't want to harm people. They have to have a body cavity search and have to have a sniffer dog sniff every object they have. Total body search, everything done, and have someone like an Israeli security officer ask 40 questions and count the beads of sweat in their forehead. The situation is it's only Only Muslims are doing this. We've had experts on the program talking about this. When anybody says that there's such a thing as moderate Islam, they're just stupid, okay? There's no other excuse for it. They're just stupid. And the secular pluralism is suicidal. It's being promulgated by our globalist leaders like Big Sister, Napolitano, wants to expand the agency, and we have this false flag in Boston. But all these are tied back to the fact that they know they're, quote, extinction-level type events that could occur like a CME. It's the same event like the Carrington in 1859 happened today. That event would be sufficient to knock our civilization back to the Stone Age or worse. And that's the kind of thing that we're talking about. Not something that's out of the range of normal. We're talking about something that happened 140 years ago, 150 years ago, which is very possible. And we know that it happens when a comet passes by the sun. Period. That's so damn simple, it's ridiculous. You can even predict the danger window. So we don't know the mechanism exactly or which direction the thing is going to be pointed, but if they knew that something could happen, they're in a panic over it. And when they can't grab the guns, can't pass the background check, which is we know where your guns are so we can grab them a bill, which is what they should call it, they're in a panic over the fact that the public are getting with it. They know that the bankers are criminals. The government now is in a total cabal with them. We have the fusion of transnational corporatism and world government and a new world order. Basically, it's called world fascism. And the new world order is not a future thing. It's something that's been developing and mutating over many years and centuries. And now it's at the point where it's ready to start consuming the citizens of the planet once it gets control. They're not going to get control of America. Ain't going to happen. They want to start something like an avian plague or another disaster so they can try to, with gradualism, get our guns. And in the stupid democratic states that pass laws like New York State, I've challenged them to say, because there's listeners in New York State, if you start grabbing the guns of our veterans in New York State, you can expect to start losing officers that are SWAT team and special forces. And not only those officers, but you're going to start seeing the danger to many other, let's say, people that are literally violating the Constitution and attacking the citizenry, and you're asking for a hot civil war. You're going to get it, but it's the one you're not going to control. And the fact is, our senators had enough sense that the minority senators killed this stupid bill because a background check bill isn't going to work. A simple one would have been have the county sheriff have a list of people who are mentally ill, have a background check to see if they're on the list. If they are, never build a list where the state or the federal government can grab guns. Because if they do, they know exactly what homes, because the Mexican government wanted that list. They said, hey, we're directly in cahoots with the drug cartels. We want to know what homes we can go to that don't have guns. Because if the people who have guns, man, they're going to shoot back and could kill us. We want to be able to abduct people and not be able to.
They don't want to. It's like anybody. It's like what the cops do now. They give out speeding tickets. They're not preventing crime anymore.
No. The fact is, what we have is a ridiculous situation. Send a text message from the grave if you're waiting for a police officer to show up if you're being attacked. Come on. The same with the security company. If you don't have your own home weapons, I tell people one of the big scams is these security companies have motion sensors, and in fact, we're going to be bringing on prepper experts talking about that. Have some night vision cameras around your property. If they hit trigger off some motion sensors, it tells you to wake up and watch your monitor. If it's something you know shouldn't be on your property, it's going to be make my day. And the fact is that if you come out of your home with a shotgun and or a 233 a weapon with a star scope on it and a 4-foot-long razor sharp machete and an attitude and a body armor, it's going to kind of discourage bad behavior.
Dr. Bill, I wanted to mention another thing that I'm seeing with the comet data, and here's what's going on. There's a thing called an ephemeris, which is basically orbital data. It's a fairly complex set of numbers, and this is for comets. It's housed at a website with JPL, Jet Propulsion Laboratory, NASA in California, and also at the Smithsonian. There's a depository for this data on comets and asteroids and any other object floating around out there.
Yeah. Now, what is an ephemeris? What is the ephemeris again? You mentioned it earlier in the hour.
Right. Basically, it's the data that tells you the orbit of an object out in outer space.
Right.
And
so you'll know exactly where it should track.
Orbital data.
So if you didn't get that orbital data on the so-called Planet X or any orbital material going around Planet X, it's all ridiculous, because something that big, we're talking about something that's a number of masses of the Earth, not just a little object. In fact, we know that the Ison comet you mentioned on the show is more likely around 2,600 kilometers across, not 7 or 6 kilometers. And that the action at distance will be very significant.
But here's what's going on, and I just started seeing this as I was working with these various comets, Comet Lemon, which is now up in the morning sky, Comet Pan-STARRS, which was here a little while ago, Comet Ison, and then I started looking at other comets. They're changing the ephemeris on a daily basis, and so
you're kidding.
They'll change it by as much as 10 days of where these comets will be, first of all, so nobody can see them, but also to mess up any of my predictions, because I, of course, use this data, trusting it for making predictions of alignments of other solar system events. They are now changing the data. So it's not available to mature.
Yeah, but that data wouldn't expect to change, because once it has a trajectory, it's extremely unlikely for the gravitational dynamics to change the trajectory and the velocity of these objects. So when
it might change by a few minutes, or maybe at most an hour if something major happened.
Yeah.
But these are changing by 10 days, which is ridiculous, of course. So
it's beyond the range of normal variation in the database, or a change in direction or velocity that would make sense.
Right, and so what's going on is, first of all, these are automated systems. When the data comes in, the data is entered into a system, it's number crunched, and it produces the orbital data in the ephemeris, which is also tells you what position relative to Earth to look if you have a telescope, what longitude, the right ascension, and the other places to look for the object, and the time, etc. So the clock, all of this is contained in this data. They're changing it. They're changing it.
So this is the elements of a government cover-up. So, and one of my rules of a government cover-up: don't believe anything until you see a government denial. And by seeing the data changing, that's a government denial. It means denying you accurate and reliable data, twisting the data, or coming up with reports like these other scientists to try to pretend that they've apprehended your data and made your discoveries, which is late, and then twisted the consequences of that, or twisted in such a way that people can't believe you anymore, even though you're the originator of the original predictions based on a different scientific model. So this is another example of don't believe anything until you see the government try to deny it or cover up.
Yeah, it's amazing. I've got a number of pages of this type of articles that have come out, basically twisting and changing the concepts and even contradicting the old concepts of comets. Like they always denied that comets could affect the sun, and these are the standard major comet theorists from NASA. All of a sudden now, this guy from left field, who nobody's ever heard of, he doesn't have any history in the science industry with comets, and all of a sudden he's predicting that an ice ball can cause a big solar flare.
Wow.
You see what?
Yeah, that's amazing. Definitely need to get back on next week. If you listen to your program, which is jmccsci.com, you do a weekly radio show. You're here back roughly every week or 2 weeks. We try to get you back regularly, Professor McCanney. You know, don't listen to these fools out there that are making things up on YouTube. We have real dangers that are going on, financial dangers that we talked about in the first hour with David Morgan, real physical dangers with Fukushima. Deal with reality, not dreams, not ideas that are not based in reality or real data.
The Aztec calendar and how to read it. This is how you normally see the calendar. Most of the times you don't see these features here. This is the center of the calendar. If you noticed, all I've done is fold it in half. If you kind of look now, do you see half the skull? Well, let me show you here. see that skull. And the cone is pointed down. Oddly enough, the transverse. And notice the little circles, the little details. Okay, well, this 300-page book with every page open on it, these indicators here, form new pages. That image. That image. What I've discovered is that, well, several of these images come right together and form new images. Okay. You see the skull? Kind of like the shoulder pads and the. But if you notice from the tip to the tail, that image is actually seamed right there. It is actually two of the same images. Here's a higher detailed picture, higher resolution, and as you can see, normally I show this to people and, oh yeah, they've seen it. Not this one. Here's some close-ups so you can tell the detail. There's the skull. See the small feature there? And how everything lines up, the half ear, the whole length. Here's another one, and if you notice, all these little features line up very clearly, very concisely. This is my my favorite. Anyway, if you can imagine, see the two nostrils and the big jaw, and the snake is coming right at you. Okay, well, watch it go away. Because now there's the eye, the jaw, the teeth, and it's going this way. Eye, jaw, teeth. So this image is in fact made out of 3 images. Way more than that, but I always like to start with this little guy right here. And that little guy, miraculously, becomes a snake. And you see these dots that are actually all over the calendar? Well, those 2 dots aren't there. Okay, and you see the snake. Okay, now that is, from that side, no digital manipulation here. Do you see this perfect mirror image? Beautiful mirror image with the 2 birds. Oddly enough, that is not a mirror image. This part of the image is 4.5, 5, 6 feet away on this side of the calendar. Okay, and the same thing applies over here. Perfect mirror image. Now, I don't speak Natali, but I'm sure these images are showing something new. All the way right out to this little guy right here. That little half image right there, those little dots, line up. And that picture, not manipulated, from over here. Now, this is the center of the disc, and one thing I've learned, without all the pictures on it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Hold it in one more notch. There's your 6 point. Isn't that beautiful? 5. 4. 3. 2. Now, what do you think of the Aztec god Coatl? Oh, wait a minute. We notice the Cyclops eye. Nice little alien head. Oh, this is male, right down to the peni. Anyway, how come at the Museum of Anthropology the statue is 18 feet tall and it looks like that? Now, oddly enough, you can look, every scale along here lines up. And before we go just denouncing me right out of the gate, how about this picture here? Your basic Mesoamerican image. Nice little guy. You've got your rabbit and everything. But isn't it quite clear that if you just take that negative out, that image is indeed supposed to be lined up such as such? And one more time, Coatl, and I wish I could zoom in. I'll show you all the way up here. Look at that whole image. Every bit of it lines up. If you look at it again, all I've done is taken that negative out, that negative space right there. The only reference I've ever found to this is the first book ever written on cryptology by Mithras, 1500s, the first book ever written on cryptology. Now, do we see this beautiful cross right there? Is that very clear to you? Let's see if I can throw some light on the subject. Every bit of this calligraphy, from that cross, every line of that, and I really kind of wish I could read Farsi. Okay, well, I'm pretty sure that's what it is, Farsi. Because that is 2/2 of the calligraphy of this doorway lining up. Well, first off, I'd like to thank Eric von Däniken. I read your book when I was 12, and how do you say? I bought it. It wasn't a question to me. I've spent the rest of my life debating, reading, studying, learning, relearning what our ancients taught us. So, Eric von Däniken, thank you. From anybody from Prometheus, Whitney has my contact information. And as far as all that goes, it's not all. This is a condensed version of my research. All of this is my proprietary research. I have a whole section on Navajo sand paintings, fractal-based visual math. I have a lot of beautiful things I'd like to share with the world. It's just been all my research at this point in time. How do you go from one to the other? Well, I don't rightly know. That I know that this is correct, that the oneness of all religions means something. But this sand painting is, well, it's kind of what started it all. Actually started it all was that same sand painting, but when I found it, it was in Corel Draw 9's clip art folder for religious symbols. Okay. All I can ask anyone is to believe. It's not a hard thing to do. Anyway, thank you. I'll be posting more.